Her story began not in grand halls or on public stages, but in the quiet, green-smudged hills of Tennessee, where the land was both provider and prison. The air smelled of turned earth and honeysuckle, a deceptive sweetness overlaying a life of unyielding toil. Her childhood was not one of dolls and lullabies, but of calloused hands and sunburnt shoulders. A small figure moving between chicken coops, vegetable rows, and the endless hauling of water. Her father was a stern and volatile man, a product of a harder century, whose world was small, tightly controlled, and ruled by the twin scriptures of the Bible and his own unpredictable temper. His love, if it existed, was expressed through silence and the expectation of obedience. Her mother was a whisper in that loud house, a woman worn to a soft sigh by labor and submission, yet she provided fleeting moments of tenderness, a secret piece of cornbread saved from supper, a gentle hand braiding hair at night, that felt like rare, illicit gifts. The Great Depression carved deep, unerasable lines of worry into their already strained existence. Hunger was not a metaphor but a familiar ghost in the corners of their cramped farmhouse, a hollow, aching presence that dictated every meal and every missed opportunity. She found her first refuge in the rough, untamed beauty of the surrounding woods. While her siblings sought companionship in each other, she sought solace in the dappled light beneath the oaks and the constant, chattering conversation of the creek. She would talk to the trees, to foxes she spotted at a distance, to the clouds scudding across the wide Appalachian sky, weaving elaborate imaginary worlds where she was a queen, an explorer, a poet. This rich inner landscape became her primary fortress, a psychic space no one could invade or dictate. Education was a precarious luxury her family could scarcely afford, often sacrificed to the demands of planting and harvest. Yet, whenever chores allowed, she walked the miles to the one-room schoolhouse, her feet bare in the warmer months, her mind a thirsty sponge. Books, with their cracked spines and faded ink, became her escape vessels. They carried her far beyond the limestone ridges and hollows of her home, to Victorian London, to the court of French kings, to the frontiers of the Wild West. She dreamed of cities and stages, of a life writ large in experiences, not just in endurance. Her father saw these dreams as dangerous rebellion, a vanity that insulted their station and threatened his authority. He believed a woman's mind, like her body, was meant for useful, finite purposes. To curb this dangerous trajectory, he arranged a practical transaction, a marriage for her at just 15 years old. The groom was a neighboring farmer's son, a man nearly twice her age, whose primary qualifications were his owned acreage and his sober, industrious reputation. Her wedding day felt less like a celebration and more like a quiet, solemn funeral for her own nascent soul. The simple dress she wore felt like a shroud. The marriage proved to be a cage, meticulously constructed from domestic servitude, silent meals, and a profound, aching loneliness. Her husband was not overtly cruel, but he was profoundly indifferent, viewing her as a necessary appliance, a cook, a cleaner, a bearer of children. He wanted a worker, not a partner. Certainly not a wife with a buzzing, curious mind that asked about things beyond the weather and the price of feed. She bore her first child, a daughter she named Anna, before her 16th birthday. Motherhood brought a fierce, terrifying love that both anchored her to this life and galvanized her desire to break from it. She would stare at her baby's perfect, sleeping face by the low light of the kerosene lamp, tracing the soft cheeks, and vow with a silent, ironclad intensity that this girl would know a different future, one with choices, with voices, with horizons. The Second World War, a distant thunder, eventually echoed even in their remote hollow. Young men left, leaving gaps in the church pews and at the general store. Women, she heard through gossip and rare radio broadcasts, were going to work in factories building ships and planes. The world, vast and unknown, was shifting on its axis, and a restless, electric energy took hold of her, an unshakable feeling of now or never. In the stolen moments of quiet, when the baby napped and her chores were done, she began to secretly give form to the words swirling inside her. She wrote poems on the backs of feed sacks, on the margins of old catalogs, on any scrap of paper she could pilfer and hide. They were verses about the red cardinal outside her window, about the weight of the cast-iron skillet in her hand, about the longing for a road she could not see. She hid these fragile testaments in a baking flour tin, buried beneath the white powder, a trove of her true self existing right under the nose of a man who would never think to look there. One poem, written in a particularly desperate hour, was about a sparrow she had seen beating its wings against the inside of a barn window, confused by the invisible barrier between it and the open sky. The image haunted her. Then, her second pregnancy arrived, unexpected and complicated. The baby, a boy she named James, was born frail and sickly, his cries a weak mewling that frightened her. The local doctor, a brusque man with tired eyes, advised constant care, special medicines, and a level of attention her life was not structured to provide. Her husband saw the expense and the extra burden as a divergence from God's plan, a test he was unwilling to finance. He told her in a tone of finality that God would decide the child's fate. She looked at her son's tiny, struggling chest, at his blue-veined eyelids, and decided then that God required her own two hands to act. The decision once made was absolute. One bleak pre-dawn morning, with her savings secured in a small pouch against her skin, she bundled her feverish infant and sleepy toddler into their warmest clothes. She left a note that said nothing and everything, took nothing that belonged to him, and walked the 3 miles to the county road to meet the first bus. She was leaving with nothing but the clothes they wore, her secret savings, and a terrifying, exhilarating certainty that to stay was to let a part of them all die. The bus ride to Nashville was a terrifying symphony of new sounds and sights, the grinding roar of the engine, the hiss of the air brakes, the blur of unfamiliar towns. Freedom in those first hours tasted of diesel exhaust, of cold bus station coffee, of Anna's persistent questions. In Nashville, she found a single rented room in a dilapidated but clean boarding house run by a widow who took pity on her. She took the first job she could find, waitressing at a diner frequented by truckers and salesmen. The hours were brutally long, her feet swelled and ached, and the constant smile felt like a physical strain. James required weekly doctor visits and costly syrups, devouring her meager tips. Desperation birthed a relentless stamina. She secured a second job, mopping floors in an office building after midnight, the cavernous, empty spaces echoing with her loneliness and the swish of the mop. Sleep became a rare, fickle visitor. She would often collapse on the thin mattress beside her children, studying their sleeping faces in the orange glow of the streetlight, their survival her magnificent, all-consuming obsession. Her beauty, sharpened by hardship into something striking and weary, did not go unnoticed. A regular customer at the diner, a traveling salesman named Charles with smooth hands and a smoother tongue, noticed her. He was charming, well-dressed, spoke of easy money and the glamour of Chicago. He listened to her with an intensity she had never experienced, promised to care for her and her children, to solve the relentless arithmetic of poverty. Exhaustion and desperation can make a risky offer sound like divine salvation. Yearning for stability, for a partner, for a reprieve from the relentless struggle, she accepted. She moved with him to Chicago, hoping for a fresh start. The fresh start soured with terrifying speed. Charles was not a successful businessman, but a small-time gambler with a polished veneer and deep, hidden debts. The charm evaporated, revealing a man with a short temper and a need for control. The argument started small. A comment about her cooking, a question about missing money, and quickly grew into violent storms of shouting and broken crockery. One night, when she dared to press him about the overdue rent, his open hand connected with the side of her face. The blow was less painful than it was shocking in its brutal clarity. The sting on her skin was a revelation. She had fled one captivity only to volunteer for another, this one disguised in a suit and tie. The workshop was a deafening, oily cathedral of industry. A cavernous space filled with the shriek of metal on metal, the hiss of steam, the roaring gargle of massive machines. The air vibrated. She learned to operate a turret lathe, to shape cold, unforgiving steel with precise, steady hands, to read blueprints, to measure in thousandths of an inch. It was hard, dirty, dangerous work that left her covered in fine black grit, her ears ringing for hours afterward. But her first paycheck, earned entirely by her own skill and sweat, was a tangible testament of pure triumph. It represented a door she had unlocked herself. She rented a single, clean room for her small family. It was hers, secured by her own labor, a fortress built not on promises but on capability. For nearly a decade, her life achieved a fragile, stable rhythm. The war ended, the factory work dwindled, but she adapted, moving to clerical work for a large insurance company, her meticulous nature serving her well. Her children grew. Anna became a quiet, bookish teenager. James a spirited boy who loved baseball. They attended school regularly. Her world had a predictable orbit, and the sharp edges of fear began slowly to soften. Then the axis tilted again. Anna, at 17, fell into a desperate, all-consuming love with a boy from a different part of the city. He was handsome, reckless, and utterly unprepared for the consequences of passion. When Anna became pregnant, he vanished, leaving only a note full of weak apologies. The shame in that era was a palpable, suffocating weight. Anna, already prone to a deep sensitivity, crumpled under it, sinking into a profound postnatal despair that no amount of her mother's love could initially penetrate. The baby, a girl they named Clara, was healthy and beautiful, but Anna viewed her with a detached, haunted sadness. One ordinary Tuesday afternoon, she came home from work to a silence in their apartment that was somehow wrong, a thick, heavy quiet that immediately choked her. She found Anna unconscious on her bed, an empty bottle of aspirin on the nightstand. The following hours were a blur of primal terror. The frantic call, the screaming ambulance, the blinding white lights of the emergency room, the smell of antiseptic and dread. Anna survived, the stomach pump scouring her body of the poison, but not the pain. The damage to her spirit was profound, leaving her a ghost in their home, needing constant, watchful care. The burden multiplied. Clara needed a mother. She took on the role once more, this time as a grandmother raising a newborn while also caring for her ailing adult daughter. She worked her day job, came home to feed and bathe the infant, managed the household, and tried to coax Anna back to the world. Her own son James, now a teenager, reacted to the heavy, sorrowful air of their home with a building anger. He felt overlooked, trapped in a narrative of tragedy not his own. Seeking structure, escape, and a way to be his own man, he enlisted in the army the day he turned 18. His letters from basic training were brief but hopeful, full of newfound pride and talk of seeing the world. She kept them in a ribbon-tied bundle, talismans of his safety. Anna's recovery was a jagged line on a graph, moving incrementally upward before plunging back down, requiring hospital stays that devoured her savings. The telegram from the Department of the Army arrived on a pristine Tuesday morning. It was not about Vietnam, not about a foreign battlefield. Her son was killed in a routine training exercise at Fort Hood, a vehicle rollover on a dusty road. The news did not just arrive. It invaded, detonated, and permanently scarred the landscape of her soul. She began, tentatively, to attend a community writing workshop at the local library. Her voice was shaky at first, barely a whisper as she read lines about Tennessee hills and factory noise and loss that had no end. But people listened. They nodded. They heard their own struggles in the cadence of her grief. Slowly, her voice grew stronger. She became a quiet pillar in that group, especially for the younger women who saw in her not a victim, but a survivor, a weathered map of resilience. She offered no platitudes, no easy answers, only a blueprint for endurance, for putting one foot in front of the other while carrying an unbearable weight. Her granddaughter Clara grew, a bright, curious sapling in the shadow of family tragedy. She poured all her thwarted love, all her hard-won knowledge into this girl. They spent hours at the public library, not just reading stories, but studying history, science, geography. She was determined that Clara's world would be vast, conquerable, full of questions with answers. "Your mind is your territory," she would tell her. "No one can tax it or take it from you. Farm it well." Anna remained a fragile, permanent presence, in and out of state hospitals, a reminder of wounds that never fully heal. Yet life, with its stubborn, indifferent force, insisted on weaving moments of bright thread into the dark tapestry. There were birthday cakes for Clara, carefully iced. There was the proud day Clara brought home a perfect report card. There were evenings of shared jokes over a game of cards, laughter that felt startling and genuine when it came. When Clara graduated high school as valedictorian and won a full scholarship to study engineering at Purdue University, it was the proudest, most triumphant day of her life. It felt like a victory pulled directly from the jaws of decades of defeat. Clara's departure for college was a bittersweet tearing, a necessary amputation. The small apartment felt cavernously empty again, the silence a returning, haunting echo. She filled it not with self-pity, but with purpose. She began volunteering at the same community center that had once helped her, teaching literacy to adults, many of them older women like herself, who had been told their entire lives they were too old, too simple, too something to learn. She used poetry as a key, having them write about their first job, their childhood home, a loved one. The words unlocked the letters. The stories gave the skills meaning. One student, an elderly Polish immigrant named Walter who had worked in the stockyards for 50 years, laboriously sounded out the syllables of a poem about a blacksmith, and then, with tears cutting paths through the wrinkles on his cheeks, wrote his own name for the very first time. In that moment, witnessing his raw, transcendent joy, she understood her purpose with crystalline clarity. She was not meant to be merely a survivor of tragedy. She was to be a witness, a translator of pain into understanding. Her suffering had value only if it could be alchemized into a tool to help others bear their own. This epiphany gave her a final, focused mission. She began to compile her decades of writings. The early fragments recalled from memory, the poems from the dark years, the newer works of reflection, into a coherent manuscript. She titled it Notes from the Resistance, framing her life not as a series of passive sufferings, but as a chronicle of an ordinary woman's private wars. A small, respected local press, impressed by the raw power and unvarnished truth of her voice, agreed to publish it. The book launch was held in the multi-purpose room of the community center that had become her second home. The room was packed to overflowing. Her former students from the literacy program, her friends from the writing workshop, neighbors, colleagues from her old insurance job. Clara flew home, her beautiful, confident engineer granddaughter, a living testament to the investment of that love. And Anna, stabilized on new medications and with constant support, stood quietly in the back, a small, genuine smile touching her lips as she watched her mother. When it was her time to speak, she stood at the simple podium, her hands resting on the well-worn cover of her book. She did not read a poem about grand themes. She read the one she had rewritten from memory, about the flower tin, about the burning papers, about the invisible window. Her voice, now aged and soft, did not waver. It carried the weight of every year in its steady tone. The applause that followed was a wave of sound that filled the room, not just for the poems, but for the monumental life they represented, for the sheer, unbroken force of her presence. She never became famous. She never became rich. In the world's eyes, her life remained a small one. But she had achieved something more powerful. She had become whole. Her later years were spent in a modest, sun-drenched apartment filled with books sent by Clara, thriving plants, and the quiet companionship of the friends she had made. She continued to write and to teach the occasional workshop until her hands grew too unsteady to hold a pen. Clara visited often, her career a blooming, lasting victory, their conversations a seamless blend of past wisdom and future dreams. She passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 89, a stack of new library books on her nightstand. Her published obituary was brief, listing her as a mother, grandmother, poet, and teacher. But the true record was written in the crowded room at her memorial service. Former students, now grandparents themselves, stood and read her poems about dignity and work. Friends told stories of her pragmatic, unwavering counsel in times of crisis. Clara spoke last, her voice strong and clear, describing a love that was not soft, but fierce, a love that was a guiding, unbreakable light, a love that taught her how to build bridges and engines and a life of her own design. Her life was the ultimate American story, not of fame seized, but of a self relentlessly reclaimed. It was a tapestry of extraordinary, ordinary courage, woven thread by thread in the hidden spaces where women have always fought their fiercest battles. She was a soldier in America's hidden wars. The war against poverty, against despair, against the silencing of the female spirit. Her battlefields were the kitchen, the factory floor, the bus station, the hospital ward, the lonely apartment. Her weapons were her indomitable will, her quietly defiant words, and a love that refused to capitulate to bitterness. Her legacy was not in a single, heroic act, but in the daily, crushing, magnificent decision to go on, to hope, to build anew from the ashes. She proved that bravery is not the absence of fear or suffering. It is the profound, cumulative artistry of a million small endurances. It is the quiet voice that says again and again, through fire and loss and loneliness, I am still here. I see you. We can go on. Her story is the story of an unbroken beacon, a light kindled in fury and tended in hope, that refused every gale that tried to extinguish it. It is a light that continues to shine for anyone navigating their own private dark, a reminder that the most unusual, tragic lives often hold the most universal, enduring hope. Her name was Eleanor, but everyone who knew and loved her simply called her Nora. And her light, passed on in stories and poems, in the life of a brilliant engineer, burns on.